This is Chris Sartorial. In this video, I'll be demonstrating how to draft a woman's skirt sloper from body measurements. Part 1 is for a single dart sloper that has a total of 4 darts encircling the waist. This is most suitable for a straighter figure, where the difference between the waist and hip is less than 10 inches.
Alright, for a skirt block, you really only need 3 essential measurements. The waist, of course, in my dress form is measuring 28 inches. You'll need the distance below the waist for the fullest part of the hip. Usually that will be between 7 and 10 inches. My dress form measures 8 inches down to the fullest point. Then you'll want to measure the hip at that level. And she's measuring 37.5 inches. Of course, you'll also need a length measurement, but that will be determined by your own preference or styling. I suggest you make the length of your sloper the skirt length you will most often be using for yourself or whomever you're making the skirt for.
I'm going to add 1/2 inch of ease to the waist, bringing it up to 28 1/2 inches, and 2 inches of ease to the hip, bringing it to 39 1/2 inches.
In order to draft your skirt sloper, you'll need paper, of course, and your ruler and a pen. It may also help you to have a long ruler, especially if you're doing a long skirt, and something to square from, like an L square. It'll help to have your French curve. And you also might consider getting what's called a hip curve. This is what many professional pattern makers use when drafting the curve of the hip on a skirt or a pair of pants. It's not essential, but nice to have. As you can see, I've drawn a rectangle here. Now, this rectangle is equal to our half hip measurement in width and in length. In this case, it's 18 inches, but whatever skirt length you prefer. The next step we're going to want to do is to measure down from the top the distance to the fullest part of our hip, which in this case is 8 inches. Just draw a line straight across. Then we'll need to draw a vertical line, splitting this in two. You can draw it right in the middle, or as I did with the bodice draft, you can shift that line slightly to the back. Half of the 19 3/4 in this case is going to be 9 7/8. And I'm going to just shift it 1/8 inch to the back. It seems like very little, but it helps. You can leave that step out if you prefer. It's not as essential for the skirt to be wider in the front as it is for a bodice. And the skirt we're going to draft is a single dart sloper. It's going to have one dart at the back quadrant and one dart at the front for a total of 4 darts going around the skirt. This skirt is great for a figure where the hip, the difference between the waist and hip is not more than 10 inches. If the figure is more curvaceous and you have a greater difference between the hip and waist than 10 inches, the double dart method, one that has 8 darts going around the waist, is probably going to fit better. this skirt, my form measures 11 inches difference between the waist and hip, which is pushing it a bit. You know, a little beyond what I would recommend for a single dart block, but I'm going to go ahead and draft it for you anyway so you can see the difference. Before we proceed in putting our darts in place, we'll need to do a little math. I'm going to do it right over here. We'll take our half hip measurement, which is 19 3/4, and we'll subtract our half waist measurement, which is 14 1/4. That gives us 5 1/2 inches. So we need to lose 5 1/2 inches at the top of our pattern, both in the darts and at the side seam. My back dart is going to be 1 1/4 inches wide. You can make it as deep as 1 1/2 inches, but that can be tricky. If your fabric is very crisp, it can leave dimples at the bottom of your dart. You can probably get away with that if your fabric is more supple, but I'm going to put a 1 1/4 inch dart in the back, so I'm going to subtract the 1 1/4 inches, which is going to leave me with 4 1/4. And my front dart is going to be 1 inch deep, slightly shallower than the back dart, so I'm going to subtract the 1 inch, which is going to leave me 3 1/4 inches. And that 3 1/4 inches now is what's left over that has to come out at the side seam. So I'm going to divide 3 1/4 inches in two and make a mark either side of this line. That is half of 3 1/4 is 1 5/8. So I'm going to make a mark either side of that line. So now I can draft in my darts. Let's start in the back. I'm going to find the midpoint between these 2 points. It's about 8 inches, so 4 inches. I'm going to square line straight down. And I want that line to be 5 1/2 inches. That's about as long as you're going to want to make a dart in the back below the waist. If I were making it a little narrower at the top, I could make it shorter, but I really don't want it any longer than 5 1/2 inches in the back below the waist. Darts longer than that start to look a little awkward. It's not a hard and fast rule, but it's certainly what I recommend. Now I'm going to take my back dart, I said was going to be 1 1/4 inches. So I'm going to divide that in two and mark either side of this line. So 5/8 either side of the line. And then join these 3 points. Now we'll do our front dart again. Measure a point, mark a point midway between these 2. And square line straight down. This front dart I'm going to make 4 1/2 inches below the waist, or an inch shorter than my back dart. Again, 4 1/2 is pretty much the maximum length you're going to want to make a front dart below the waist. It's going to be 1 inch deep, so I'll mark a 1/2 inch either side of this line and connect the points. There's my front dart. One of the things that tends to happen is that over the hip curve at the side, we actually measure a little longer than we do at the center front and center back. So I'm going to mark a point here at the side 3/8 of an inch above the line. Now I can take my hip curve and I can draw a nice smooth curve blending from the hip to this side seam point. Flip it. Same thing on the other side. What you want to avoid is if this hip has too much curve. Now this may be excessive, we'll see when we sew it up. If there's too much curve at your side seam, then it can cause fitting problems. You can get kind of a pouchy or bubbly effect at the hip. In that case, you'll want to make the darts deeper or go to a double dart method rather than the single dart. If you find that your side seams are your hip curve is too straight with very little curve, then you'll want to make your darts shallower. The back dart can be as deep as 1.5 inches or maybe only as shallow as 1 inch, and the front dart can be up to 1.25 or maybe only as much as 3/4. But keep that in mind. You're balancing how much fullness you take out of the darts versus how much fullness you take out of the side seam. You don't want your side seams to be too curved. Now I need to, in order to blend from nothing to 3/8 up here, I want to mark 1/8 of an inch up at my darts so I can blend more smoothly. Now I can take my French curve and blend. Same thing like that. You can also fold your dart and then blend your line. So this basically finishes the pattern. I'll need to split this, add seam allowance and a hem at the bottom, and cut it out and sew it up. Here's the skirt pattern that I just made, cut out in the muslin and sewn up. It looks quite nice in the front and back. Maybe getting a little too much bubbling here at the hip. That's because the hip curve is a little excessive. As I said, this dress form measures 11 inches smaller in the waist than it does in the hip after the ease has been added. And that's a little more than I would normally recommend for a single dart block. But in a more supple fabric, it probably would work even better. If the waist, as I said before, is less than 10 inches smaller than the hip, the single dart block will work very well for you. If the waist, your waist or whoever you're making the skirt for, if their waist is more than 10 inches smaller than the hip, you're better off going with the double dart block,
which I will demonstrate in the next video. Thanks for watching, and let me know how this works for you.